Ladders are designed to carry 4 times the maximum intended load. There's 3 classifications that OSHA uses with one subdivision. The first and the only ladders that are allowed on the job site are going to be the first 2 classifications, which are 1 and 1A. 1 being rated for 300 pounds, 1A being rated for 250 pounds. There's Class 2, which is 200 pounds, and then Class 3, which is, I believe, 180 pounds. The 2 and 3 ladders are not allowed to be used on job sites, Class 2 or 3. So if it's allowed to carry maximum 4 times the maximum intended load, it's going to be designed to be able to handle a greater load than that. For those of you that have been on those wimpy ladders that are going to be Class 2 or 3, they are really not designed or very rigid to be able to do activities. So if you flex on it, it's going to be damaged. The ladders the rungs need to be 10 to 14 inches apart and be of a non-slip shape, so the rungs are going to be not circular, but basically are going to be something that's going to hold your feet into place. And this is dealing specifically with step ladders, because you're going to run into some rounded runged extension ladders. But when we're talking about step ladders, 4 times maximum intended load, 10 to 14 inches apart is pretty standard non-slip shape. Uniform, parallel, and level, making sure that it's level. If it's not level, it's going to tip over. Don't tie or fasten them together. Don't use opaque coatings. Don't paint wood ladders, because you lose the ability to have the visual inspection to determine whether or not there's an issue associated with wood deterioration. Is it broken? Is it damaged? OSHA doesn't let you paint them. In terms of positioning, can you stand on the top one? No. Obviously, people have stood on here many times, enough to wear the label away here and the label away here. It's a ladder safety device. We talked about this in the walking working surfaces section. This is in lieu of that 30-foot rest period. So I can climb up as long as I'm going to be caught and stopped, before I fall to the bottom, which in this case, as soon as I start to fall or lose my grip, it actuates this brake against the cable and brings you to a complete stop. One other thing that's interesting about this picture is that you'll notice that this is a body belt here. This is still the literature that the company puts together to show it. This picture is still out there on the web, but he's only got a body belt on, which is not illegal anymore. In this case, because of what it's being used for, most likely you wouldn't have an issue. But you can notice over here, if the individual bangs his head, he's unconscious, he's not going to be able to expand his diaphragm. He's got to get himself back righted up onto the ladder so that he can expand his diaphragm, otherwise he can suffocate. And that's one of the reasons why body belts are no longer allowed, except as a positioning device. Now, ladders have to be 3 feet above the landing. In this case, this is a fixed ladder that's used to gain access to a roof, and it has this little ladder safety device that of a different type, which is allowed to be accessible. So what happens is, if I want to get into this ladder, I can grab hold of this and then swing my feet around and have something to hold on to. I can tell you from personal experience, it's not fun to be 20 feet up, 25 feet up from the floor and have a situation where you don't have anything to grab onto while you're trying to get into a ladder. It makes for potentially ungraceful departures. Here's the diagram, not accurate, but I have this because it's kind of humorous. This was put out there as a ladder coaching device in a training module. And what ended up happening is, if you look at it, we talked about the 12-inch spacing between the rungs. There should be 3 rungs, right? So we got one here, that's 1 foot. So theoretically, there's 2 feet. So we're missing a rung here. But the ratio is 1 foot here for every 4 feet you go up. Very important to remember that. This is a ladder accident that I investigated. And the individual that was using this ladder didn't secure the extension ladder. And the floor was somewhat slick, and as he climbed it, he didn't have it at the right angle. So he basically rode the ladder down and fell 14 feet. So you can see, here's one of the rungs of the ladder, and here's another picture of the two of them. So as soon as it got down to here, you see that it stops because the one side went over here, and he basically just rode it down. Here's a picture of the same ladder that was involved in it. It's got the nice skid feet, but it wasn't secured. And this floor is an air plenum in a large building, because they use the basement where this was at is the air handler for return air. And so this would get dusty. And this is one of those epoxy floors, and as soon as you get dust on it, it's quite slick. And because he didn't have it secured, it slid out from underneath him, and he messed up his shoulder. Little more is at stake here. We're working up on a roof on a building. This is not the first floor. In fact, I believe this is 4 stories up. So these guys are using this ladder as a point of access to work and do iron work. And we've got positioning devices that are being used in fall protection, but it's not used the way it's supposed to be. Only one lanyard. He's got 2, so he's got 6 feet. And if he falls, he's going to bang himself on this beam. This gentleman over here has his fall protection on appropriately. It's coming from up above. He's got 1 lanyard. He's good. This guy wanted a little more flexibility, and he's got it, unfortunately. However, the ladder, corrugated decking, not a good footing. Because unless you get this in the bottom where it's going to be, and it never is, because it's always the wrong dimensions apart, it's going to be a potential for it to shift back and forth. You should have 3 rungs above. We only have 1 rung at the actual top. The other problem here is you've got no landing area. So in this case, if the person's going to use a ladder, they got to have fall protection the whole time, because once they get here, they fall outside of that fall protection standard requirement, or clause that says you don't need to have it when you're using a ladder, because once we climb off that ladder, we have no landing, we have nothing that meets the standard. Now here, OSHA says step ladders have to be used in their intended purpose design. So these guys have these ladders up against the side of the wall here. They're painters. They painted the bottom part. Now they're going to cover it over with plastic and then paint the top part. Is this building wall going to go anywhere? No. Is this a safe way to have a ladder? Yes. OSHA says no, but reality is they're both plumb. Got another picture that'll show you that. It's not 2 guys on 1 ladder. There's 2 ladders here. These ladders aren't going to go anywhere. And in actuality, I'd rather have the ladder sitting like that against the building than the way OSHA would want you to have it, which would be this way. So they'd have to climb up this way, and you've got soft sand here. And as it shifts and as they move, they can have it tip out from underneath them. Remember we talked about that corrugated decking? What about this here? Got a little bit of a fall hazard here. Open right up. He's working right above it. Not a good plan. Areas around ladders have to be kept clear, secured, and barricaded. You shouldn't be able to walk near ladders, drive on underneath them. So sometimes some guy's got to change a light fixture. Or a classic story is where you've got that little bubble type mirror that's being used in a plant. And an employee goes and uses a ladder to clean off the mirror and then gets hit by a forklift. You got to secure it, make sure it's barricaded so that nobody's going to get hit on a ladder. No traffic. People aren't allowed to walk underneath it. So here we've got a hole, and we got this guy working above it. Occupied ladders don't move or shift or. This is another issue that you can run into on job sites. We've got a job-made support here going out, and there's actually a 2x4 back here which is supporting that at an angle. He's trying to put up some trim work on here on this house that's being constructed. Was this ladder designed to be used as a scaffold? If it was, then this half of it's okay. This half, however, may or may not be suitable. You're not supposed to mix scaffold grades. How about this ladder back here? Got slightly damaged. Each ladder is supposed to be inspected prior to use by a competent person. This one obviously wasn't inspected by a competent person.